Get ready for a healthy serving of spiritual soup with Jewels and Wendy. Your host will be cooking you up a bowl full of interesting topics, mixed with a healthy portion of inspiration, a dash of humor, a pinch of the serious, and a whole lot of love. And now, your hosts, best-selling author, international clairvoyant medium, and spiritual life coach, Jewels Rafter, and spiritual advisor and educator, professional international psychic, Wendy James.
Hello, everyone. This is Wendy James.
And I'm Jewels Rafter.
We are spiritual soup. Those are my dogs. Hello to everybody this evening as well.
Hello, puppies.
How are you tonight, Jewels?
I'm doing well. I'm actually looking forward to this subject tonight. I think it's going to be quite interesting.
I know. I think it's a good subject. I think it's one that a lot of people don't talk about too much when you're studying spiritual stuff. The title of our show tonight is two steps forward, one step backward. And what it's really about is, again, that it's not just a steady move forward. You know, we can get all jazzed about topics that we're studying, and you get really into those things, and then all of a sudden you realize you have to stop and you have to practice that stuff. Or sometimes you fall backwards and you start to question that stuff. Or, it happens to everybody. It's almost something to expect. You need to almost know that this is very normal.
I think we got both of us do a lot of coaching on spiritual development and intuitive development and all that kind of fun stuff. And like you say, it happens so often that people think that when you're on this spiritual awakening, it's all fluff and excitement and it's all awe and it's lovely all the way through and you're skipping through the tulips. Well, there are parts of it that are like that, absolutely, right? When you're having those aha moments, when you're having those insights and you're feeling so connected to your truth, yes, you're in that energy. But when it comes back to putting it into practice every day, that becomes a challenge. And like you say, Wendy, sometimes, when people start, they have all this knowledge, but not necessarily putting it into practice. And when you start doing that and you're not getting the reaction that you're expecting, or it's not happening the way you thought, or an obstacle shows up, it's like, well, hold on, I'm supposed to be spiritual now. I'm supposed to be in the flow. This isn't right. And it is, like, it happens so often. I laugh because I remember going through the same thing, having all these insights and these kind of spiritual, aha moments. And then all of a sudden, being in the flow and I'm manifesting things and it's like everything's great. I'm like, I've got my intentions out there. I'm connected to the flow. And then I hit a brick wall and I'm thinking, I'm doing everything right. Oh my God, why is this happening to me? So it's all these questions, right, that start to pop up and you second guess, well, am I actually very spiritual? Am I actually connected to source? Like, what's going on? So that happens quite often. It's so normal.
Oh my gosh, it really does. I love how you're like, everything's flowing, I'm manifesting, and everything's fine, and then you hit a wall. I think that if we expect it to constantly be up and up and up, or if we think that it needs to stay perfect all the time, we're just setting ourselves up for disappointment, and it's predictable disappointment. I think sometimes when we're not getting results from our energy work, the lighting on my face, again, everybody listening, we're doing a video and a radio show at the same time tonight. And I'm looking at my video, and I look like a little raccoon peeking out of the darkness, and Jewels is all illuminated and bright and gorgeous.
You're so funny.
Yeah, we're going forward, I think, you've got to stop and sometimes question it all. Like you're saying, you start to wonder, is this really happening? Am I doing the right thing? And I think it's in those moments when you're questioning it that we reestablish our faith in it, that we reestablish our belief in it. And I think sometimes through it's seeming to leave us, it never really leaves. But I think in those moments, we end up coming back better and stronger.
Absolutely. And like right now, I feel like there's been a shift, right? People are awakening spiritually, and they're coming to realize that there's so many potentials, and you can live in harmony with spirit. And it feels like, it's an evolutionary shift is what I feel like. More and more you're seeing people that are accepting of spirituality, are much more open to it, talking about it, right? So there's kind of this momentum of spiritual growth for everybody, right? It's happening, it's exciting. And then, there's that, like I was talking about earlier, there's that aspect of spiritual life, when you actually have to live with the realizations you've had and put it into your everyday practices, right? And then you have the choices and these challenges, and it seems like they show up out of nowhere, right? A lot of these obstacles, I think they kind of create this discouragement, and people start to second guess themselves, right? And especially those that are new in a spiritual path, like when it's I'm just getting into this, right? And I don't have a full understanding of everything that's happening around me. There's this, kind of like being like deer in the headlights kind of thing, right? Like, what's going on? What do I do now? And I think that when people come to understand how, for example, we're talking about manifesting and how, your thoughts create your reality, they may be kind of discouraged when you see the everyday difficulties happening, right? I think it's helpful when you think that we're connected to a much larger scale, right? It's not just our little process, but it's a much bigger scale. And if we look at it as, it's just not my personal experience myself, but as a whole as well, it becomes less intense or less like in your face, like, oh my God. If you think of it as we're all going through the same kind of challenges, we're all being faced with the realizations that I have all these spiritual insights, but am I putting them into practice? Am I actually doing it in my everyday life? That's where I think people start to go, oh shit. I've been all spiritual and great, but I'm actually not putting them into practice. And then there's that second guessing that kind of shows up in that questioning whether or not, we are that spiritual being.
I've talked to a lot of people that have taken courses, amazing courses from great people, great teachers, and read so many books, read and gone to workshops and done amazing things. And I think you're right. The fact that they're not slowing down to turn it into a daily practice in their own lives, they're gathering a bunch of knowledge, gathering a bunch of education.
Yeah.
Learning, but not applying it into daily experience. And I think a lot of people forget to do that. They think, oh, I studied it. It should just sink right into me since I studied this or I learned this. And it's true. It's like you say, it's a life change. It's a lifestyle you develop. It's a daily perspective. It's a daily practice. And some days you're more balanced than others. Some days there's better flow than others. And I think all that studying is great, but sometimes you have to stop and practice and practice and practice. And that's where the doubt comes in a lot.
I think when you're on that kind of journey, it's such an individual process, right? So like everybody's at a different place, everybody's at a different step. So it's sometimes really difficult to compare your own journey with someone else's, right? Because we all have different backgrounds. Wendy, I'm sorry this is so distracting. So people who are not listening, Wendy is trying to fix the lighting in her room, and I just see lamps flying by, so it's kind of quite entertaining. So anyhow, she distracted me for a minute. So you threw me off there, Wendy. There we go. You look great in that light, Wendy. There we go. Oh, can't hear you.
I put it on mute so I didn't make noise wrestling around with my lamp.
This is a bit fun.
My mouth moving. Usually we just sit there for great lengths of time and neither of us know we're on mute. I can't hear you. I think though when you stumble and fall, you get back up and you're stronger for it. There's a Japanese proverb, fall 7 times, get up 8, right? Just to pull yourself back up, get up. And the more you do that, I think the more you're stronger. I think if you just shot forward and got to the finish line or learned it all really quick, I think there are so many lessons along the way that you would never ever learn if we didn't falter or slip backwards. Sometimes when we slip backwards, we go on investigations, we restudy stuff, we go back and contact maybe old teachers, or we get back into, say, our meditative practices. Maybe we'd fallen behind and stopped doing that. And, our gifts sometimes slip away from us for us to rework our muscles to get these back.
One of the things that I like to do is I keep most of my books. So I'm a really big reader, and I have a tendency of buying tons and tons of books on growth, on spirituality, on philosophy, on all sorts of things that can keep my brain going. And one of the things that I like to do is I don't throw my books out. I keep them. And I like to go back and revisit them sometimes, because as much as, we take all this information in and all this spiritual ideas or ideologies or whatnot, I think we often forget bits and pieces along the way, right? So it's always good to go back to your basics, go back to the books you first started reading, because sometimes when you read it a second time, 5 years later, you're in a completely different place in your spiritual journey anyhow. So the same book you may have read, years ago that had no meaning to you, you may be reading it now with this, oh my God, that makes so much sense now. Right, because you've had those experiences, you've had that continuance of experiences to really resonate with what you're learning.
I love that you're bringing that up. I think a lot of people forget to revisit their books years later. I agree with you. A lot of times I'll read something and a whole bunch of it will work really well for me, but years later, a whole nother section is what I needed to learn from that book then. And I love that you say that. Do you highlight books? Do you underline? Are you a book destroyer?
I am not necessarily a book destroyer. However, I will show you what I do to my books.
What you do?
Instead of destroying them with highlights, I destroy them with sticky notes.
I have that same book.
So basically, I put little sticky notes with little messages I need to remember about the passages I read or whatnot. So it makes it easier for me when I go back to go, oh, what am I looking for? Kind of like tabs on a book, instead of the highlighter, because I do have a tendency of lending my books out. And so for me, I don't want to necessarily ruin them with the highlighting, but I have been known to highlight a book or few.
I know, I'm pretty rough on books. So I just, I highlight, I dog ear, I sticky note, I underline, I write things in the sides. I'm terrible with books. I mean, I love them. I devour them quite literally, pretty much. I think also with it's not just spiritual training and spiritual growth. A lot of times when people are trying to change into a more healthier eating habit or health regime, or dieting, or even other health practices, sometimes it is 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Sometimes you're really gung-ho about this new amazing lifestyle, and then you have a small window of time where you slip back a little bit. And I think it's important that people understand that that's very normal, that you don't have to see it as that you failed. Slipping back doesn't mean you go all the way back to the beginning. It just means that you stop for a minute, dust yourself off, realign with what your goals are, maybe learn what you were supposed to learn by having slipped backwards, and then move forward again. But I think it applies to so many different goals in our lives, is to not be taken so far back that you quit, or that you're taking it as such a hit to your ego if it isn't always just forward momentum.
Absolutely. And being spiritual isn't necessarily about being happy clappy all the time either, right? There's this kind of ideology that if you're spiritual, you're on another plane and you're completely out of tune with everything else around you, and you're much more elevated than other people. Of course, with enlightenment comes, a lot of responsibility. And I think that when we do learn, it's our responsibility to share that with other people, to share what we know. I lost my train of thought there. I was, Wendy, you know how it is. When you've got 3 thoughts coming in at the same time and you're trying to decipher, that's where I'm at tonight. My brain's doing this.
Backward phase.
There you go. You see, this is my 1 step backwards tonight.
You don't seem like you're going backwards at all. I hear you going tremendously forward in the right direction to me.
Oh, well, thank you, Miss Wendy James. You're so kind, so kind.
I think that pattern too teaches patience. It teaches perseverance. It teaches us to recommit to our goal. You know, my goal is to continue to forge forward in my spiritual development. You know, even when it's not easy or not coming perfectly, you know, at perfect flow, or I'm hitting roadblocks. Being able to recommit to, why am I doing this? What about this am I loving? What about this is nurturing me? What did I originally embark on this for? What were my original goals? And again, very much like we could apply that into our business plan too. Even if our business plan falls behind, or we're not moving forward at the rate that we wanted to, it's okay to stop sometimes and go back a little bit to realign to move forward, I think.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. A few weeks ago, I had a client that came to see me, and she's had a lot of really great awakening and insights and all these aha moments, and feeling really connected to the universe and feeling grateful. And she, you know, for a few weeks, during our coaching sessions, she'd come in and she was just like, oh, this is fantastic. I feel so lovely. I feel so uplifted. And then she came in one week looking like she had been run over by a truck. Literally looked like her energy had been sucked out of her. And I asked her, you know, what's going on? And she said, I'm so disappointed in myself. And I thought, why? What did you do? Like, you know, it sounded so grave, like just so heavy. And she said to me, I'm supposed to have evolved, and I'm supposed to be in an energy of compassion and unconditional love. And I said, okay. And she ended up having a really, really big argument with a friend of hers and said some pretty nasty things, right? So they both did. And she walked away from that feeling like a hypocrite, because she was saying how, you know, I've done all this work to really be in a place of compassion, of unconditional love, you know, and just that one glitch that happened, she was beating up on herself like she had just lost all this work she had done. And we literally sat there and talked about it, and I said, you know, it's like anything in life. We have life lessons, right? And in order to have these life lessons, we have to be faced with obstacles. We have to be faced with challenges and things that really push us past our comfort zone. And that's the same thing with spirituality, is I believe that we are tested, right? You have the opportunity to react a certain way, or to use that human side and really rip someone's head off, right? We always have that choice. And sometimes it's about being conscious of where our thoughts are at and where in that very moment. Because often if you take even 10 seconds to breathe and ask yourself whether or not the words that are coming out of my mouth are coming from a place of love or, you know, support or compassion, and if they're not, then yeah, you've taken a step back, and it happens. We're human. And I think that's part of the human experience here on Earth. Learning to be spiritual again, learning to be, and I say again because we come to this earth with this connection to the universe already. We forget about it. And it's about, you know, finding it again. So there we go.
Again, I think that's beautiful. I sometimes have to stop and ask myself, what am I doing? You know, even just as a psychic, am I thinking this or feeling this? You know, if I'm having a day where I am off, where I'm just not feeling on, I take that very serious. I don't see it as, oh no, I've lost all my gifts. I see it as contact my clients and let them know I'm off. That I know myself. I know that I just need to realign my energies, maybe do a little bit of meditating, ground myself, and I'll reschedule. And I know that it's annoying to some people, but I know myself well enough that if I am having a day where I'm off, I'm maybe a little bit trapped in my material life or my physical realm, or I'm dealing with stresses, or maybe didn't sleep well even. Yeah. I know that if I give myself that tiny bit of break, I can realign, rebalance, and get myself back into my higher level gifts where I'm a little more accurate and much more in flow. But I often will stop and ask myself, what am I doing? You know, am I doing this? And I get a lot of calls from people who are professional psychics who also go through that, and they'll call almost like they're confessing, you know.
Confessions of a psychic.
In a panic, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know what's wrong. I've lost my gifts. I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like, I'm pulling it off instead of really doing the work. And I tell them that's very normal, but to stop trying to force a circle into a square,
Absolutely.
trying to make it happen. If it's not there, it's not there. And that you're not losing anything, you're learning. Like, the fear sometimes is that you want to please your clients. You've got to give them their money's worth. You got to really, they book the appointment, you got to bang it out. And my thought is if you're chasing it, if it isn't coming at a great flow, it's better for both of you for you to be very honest about that and to not be overwhelmed or surprised by it, but to know it's very normal.
Absolutely.
You get like that where you're suddenly like questioning your gifts?
Yeah, I mean, there does come times where I'm so in the flow and, information comes in really quickly and it's so accurate and everything is like, yeah. And then there's times where I'm having that human experience, like you say. I'm having a bad week. I'm exhausted. I'm stressed about money or I'm worried about something else. The everyday human stuff. And I have had times where, even myself, as connected as I can be, when I'm in my human mode, like I like to call it, I've had to reschedule. I've had to reschedule clients or put it to the next day, because if you're not feeling that connection, right? And we all do, like you say, even all of us that do it as on a professional basis, we have off days, just like everybody else. And we have days where we're just like, you know what? Forget this. I'm just taking a step back today and realigning. And I think it's important to be able to identify when we need that space as well. That's one of the things that I found as much as I read, as much as I'm taking in all these different concepts and messages and downloads and all this fun stuff, I sometimes have to take a step back and disconnect from everyone to absorb it.
Yes.
To really take it in and to think about it without the external stimuli of your environment and your friends and the family and everything else around you. When you're in that quiet space, I always find that you get so much more clarity, right? Especially when you've been learning a lot and learning all these concepts. It's okay to take a step back from everything else and just go, I'm taking it all in, right? And I'm really processing it. Not everybody processes it at the same rate either, right? Some things will take one person, a moment to go, I get it now. And others will do the same mistake over and over for 20 times. And then they finally go, oh, now I get it, right? So it is an experience of growth all around.
I think so. And I think I've met a lot of people who will feel like they're at the end of, they've learned it all. They know it all. And you and I know a couple of people like that openly talk like that they've come to the full edge of where they have anything to learn from anybody else at this stage. And I hear that and I think, oh, I know exactly what the next phase for them will be. It will be the universe crunching them up like an accordion, slowing down their flow, slowing down their gifts for them to pull back and end up learning some of the lessons of humbleness. Yeah. Or some of the lessons of recognizing that even our students are our teachers, that exchange is important. And it's so predictable when you hear that that big inflated bubble-headed ego come out. I know in my heart what's next. I know what's next. It happened to me when I was in my 20s. I got really popular really fast as a psychic. And for me, I got really big-headed. I got really, I got full of myself for a minute. And I will tell you that I hit a wall. I hit a wall, and I had to slide down that wall like a cartoon character in a heap and pull myself back up and have a good laugh at how my ego got carried away, how I lost myself, but what I learned from that. And I learned to always recognize that you are equal as everyone, because I think you're setting yourself up for one of those big setbacks the minute you think that you're above anyone
yeah,
else.
Absolutely. And that is something that I've seen quite often in the spiritual community, especially with people that do this for a living or that help people, is that God complex. That after a while, like you say, getting so popular, you're helping so many people. It's almost like you're on a high. It's an adrenaline high of, okay, I helped this person and that one and that one. And like you're saying, when the ego takes over and it's almost like, yeah, look at me go, right? And it happens sometimes without realizing. And then all of a sudden, someone who you seemed as so grounded and gentle and spiritual and connected have become this big force to be reckoned with. It just shifts the energy so much. And I think if we can keep ourselves in check, that's super important, especially if you're doing this in the public, if you're doing it like on a professional basis like we do. I think we have to do it more often than other people, especially when you're seeing so many people on a regular basis and they're being so open and vulnerable about all these things in their lives that they're not necessarily sharing with anyone else. I think that's huge, and that there's that opportunity sometimes for people to let the ego take over and, oh, I helped this one and I helped that one and I'm, oh, right, I'm so gifted, I'm so helpful. We do, have human traits. It does happen, but that's where it's super important to keep it in check. You're so funny. If people could see Wendy's the most expressive person I know, and I'm trying to keep my shit together here because Wendy's making all these facial expressions, and I'm trying to stay calm and collected. Thank you, Wendy. You're on. Oh, it's that time.
I love that you recognize that we're human. Oh, well, we are human. Sometimes we have to just. No, you didn't just come shooting in from a. Oh, see, she's trying to make me laugh now, people. This is the problem. She's got her glasses on upside down. She's acting all trying to give me the look. I think humor is a great break as well. When we say two steps forward, one step back, especially like in business or if you've been working really, really hard, that one step back could also be a vacation or taking a break. You and I both know what it's like to be nose to the grindstone givener, where you're just driving it home and you're not taking time off and you're not slowing down, and to know that I need a break. I need to have a day where I'm just going to flop around on the couch, or me, Jules, I stay in my pajamas most of the winter in a onesie.
The onesie.
I probably need to wear dressed and go outside instead of staying in pajamas. But that need to sometimes take a break, to regather your energy, to come back at your task or your goal or whatever it is. It's an important thing for people to know when they're working in the industry where it's high stress. Where I understand there are a lot of people, type A personality, they're highly driven, they're wanting to get everything done perfectly, and I think that's wonderful, but you're also sometimes setting yourself up for a crash and burn if you're not managing your downtime, and if you're not setting it up for yourself to have that one step backward, that bit of rest, that slow down. Your body or universe is going to give it to you anyway, eventually.
Oh, it's good that way. So, just all the time, we're already at halftime, so we're going to take a short break, my lovely listeners, and we'll be back after this. Good evening, beautiful people. I am Jewels Rafter.
And I'm Wendy James.
And together we are a spiritual soup. Today we are talking about moving 2 steps forward, 5 steps back, or 5 steps forward, 2 steps back. We're not quite sure. We're talking about spiritual growth and all of these obstacles that show up. And sometimes it's not as easy as it seems.
You said that so nicely. It all moved forward well. Growth isn't linear, right? Growth isn't linear. It meanders sometimes. It takes us down pathways. I think a lot of times in life that we don't know what we're supposed to be learning. We don't know. Like, we think we're supposed to be on this certain trajectory. Say we've signed up to take a long course, a year-long course with somebody. And at the beginning, this is the direction we were sure things were going to go. But as we get deeper into the course, sometimes we're maybe feeling a setback, or we're not feeling it. But we sometimes have a temptation to just push ourselves through. This was the course I thought I was supposed to be on. This is the direction I need to go. But our instincts and our heart is pulling us backwards, but we don't want to stop. And we're questioning it all. And my feeling is that inside that gut feeling that it's okay to postpone the direction that I'm going. It's all right for me to stop partially in and check my map and be sure this is where I still want to go.
Yeah.
I think the pressure a lot of students feel when they come out of school, from high school, before they go into university, is this overwhelming sense of, what if I change my mind? What if I don't like what I'm choosing at the age of 17, 18? And what if now I'm going to be committed to a 4-year program? And there's all this pressure. And I think it's important to make sure that we let our kids know, then you change your program, then you change your direction. Life is cool like that. We don't have to log in and push a big red button and we're locked in on a certain path. The best part about life are the twists and the turns, the pathways that we never knew were going to be there, that end up taking us somewhere completely different.
That reminds me of one of those posts I saw where there's this square and a line with an arrow going, how I plan my spiritual journey. And there's this arrow straight up, going diagonally all the way up. And then they say the reality of it, there's this squiggly line going all over the place and the arrow's like all screwed up. But it gets there. And that depicts it perfectly, right? All these little twists and turns that happen. I think that's all part of the process. Right? And without it, we're not getting the growth. We're not getting the insights. Nobody learned from having everything super easy. Speaking of that, you know what? I was told by someone a long time ago that people who are light workers, so people who are mediums, who are healers, who are clairvoyants, psychics, all special people, are usually supposed to have very challenging lives, or have many obstacles and challenges throughout our lives, because that's where we get that immense spiritual growth and understanding and compassion for others. Do you believe that?
Yes, I think.
Okay. Thank you, Wendy, for that brief explanation.
All us special people thought, I'm like, oh, I'm in the club. So that tangled me for a second. But yeah, I believe that. I think that, to be honest, all the ups and downs that I've gone through in my life, and, it's a nice long list of great ups, great downs.
Yep.
It's all made me more compassionate. It's made me much better at my job. I wouldn't change a thing, even if some of it has been horrifying and awful. I wouldn't go back and change it. I feel grateful for all the terrible roadblocks that I hit. I think it just made me better. I sometimes worry about people who've lived a life where they haven't come into much conflict at all, where it's been cushy and cushiony the whole life, where they've not really had to fear much, or struggle, or have to really get into a mindset of thinking, rationing, say, money or food, or, sometimes, we go in and out of struggles, throughout our life. And I think sometimes those people, I get concerned of what will happen to them if something small even happens, I see people who get really upset over very, very, very small minutia. And to me, those are not the people that have been tried in the fire so much. And I think there's almost a bigger sense of fragility, possibly, to individuals who just haven't been battling in the forges, duking it out with the devil himself daily in their life. You know what I mean? That fight stuff makes for, in my opinion, an individual who can maybe be a little bit more mutable when life is giving you twists and turns. They can be a little bit more bendable and not so fragile that they're going to snap over one roadblock.
I'm on the same frame of mind that, I've had some pretty huge challenges thrown my way as well. And no matter how difficult or life-changing they were, I would not erase them. I would not make them any different, because it really has, I truly do believe in that statement, that when you go through certain hardships and challenges, you have to tap in really deep into your, into your soul, into your spirit, in order to keep strong, in order to keep pushing through. And I think that's where the growth happens, when you are faced with these things that Normally you would have lost it completely, but instead stayed calm and handed it over to the universe, or at least prayed that, okay, things are going to fall into place, and just had that blind faith. That's where I think that growth comes from. When you've been through all these experiences, when you've crumbled, when you've been to a point where there's nothing left to you and you're just slowly rebuilding, and if you can still be in that energy of love and compassion, then I think you've had an awesome spiritual journey.
I agree completely. I tell that to a lot of people when I'm working with that are having trouble letting their kids go out and make mistakes. They're trying to shelter their children from everything. And at a certain stage as a parent, you realize that if you keep doing this, you're going to cause more harm than good.
Yeah.
That kids need to get out and sometimes fail. And the word fail is so harshly viewed, but it's important sometimes for us to fall down or not always be the winner. I've seen kids that are so used to winning and getting prizes for every little thing that when they actually are out in the real world and there's a sport event going on or something, all of a sudden, it doesn't go their way and they're having a huge, humongous tantrum over it instead of understanding sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. Yeah. Sometimes, there are people who are better than you that are going to just teach you something, or you could learn from them. And I think that we are doing our children a great disservice by keeping them so sheltered, yeah, or over rewarding for every little thing, that you sometimes end up with a child that doesn't understand the natural ebbs and flows of life are not always perfect. It's ugly, it's bumpy, sometimes it's confusing or overwhelming, but it's important that we don't make it all shiny and sparkly all the time.
And even people, like you say, that lead that sheltered life, I still feel like they can, at some point, have that spiritual growth, have that experience, even if they haven't had the big, huge obstacles, right? And like we said before, there's different experiences for different people at different times in their life. Okay, people. Wendy, I love this woman to death. She's so distracting me tonight with all these little things on camera. So please, people, I am not usually this distracted. This is all Wendy's fault. Handing over to you, Miss Wendy.
Easily distracted. You're taking 2 steps backwards two steps forward instead of 1 step backward. Get it from is that it's Jewels who's the bad influence. She's just blaming me in public.
Okay. Oh, Lord. Digressing, but nonetheless, we're taking 2 steps back. Oh, Lord.
And I've said this in shows before, when I get people who are really at that place, that rock bottom place, and, and they're really distraught, I really love to turn it into an optimistic place. If there's something kind of obnoxious to say, well, it can't get worse, on the other hand,
is that one of your tactics, telling them it can't get worse?
No, but I try to point out that, sometimes when people are going through a huge change and their marriage is ending and they've lost a job and they're in this state of huge flux, to me, I think we're so afraid of the unpredictable, where it's going, that not knowing. All of a sudden I'm in a state of change when I thought I had everything figured out. I thought I had my whole life in front of me, and now my marriage is done, or I don't have that job. And I see it as we could either perceive it with great fear, which is doubting ourselves or doubting our faith or doubting our religion or doubting the universe, or we can see it as an opportunity that we wouldn't have given ourselves if it hadn't have come to us, crashing into us, and that it can be a point of great power to pull ourselves up and get very excited about our life again from a new perspective. And I think that fear of the unknown is another area where it's important, when we have that 2 steps forward, 1 step back, to be very mindful that when we're in confusion, to not foist negative projections out forward. Fear, tons of fear going in front of us. Fear of what? Fear of the unknown could be fear of some really great stuff coming. You might be completely afraid of the best changes that you ever could have imagined, instead of staying frozen, to get excited about where it's going. And that's a great place of power that I'll work with people. No, I don't just sit around, oh, look at you, pretty shitty. But I do go from a perspective of, look at the opportunity we have here to reground, to believe in ourselves, to get excited about potential instead of tangled and locked in because of change.
Yeah. But change, I think change can be scary, right? Like, especially if you're going on this life lesson journey, right? There's no guide. There's no workbook to go with it. You're literally flying by the seat of your pants, and we all are having our own individual experience. So I don't think there's any right or wrong way of throwing yourself into, that spiritual side, that I can't think of the words. I've got.
Okay. That's okay. You're wordless.
I'm wordless right now. Sweet Jesus.
It's okay. That's all right. I will support you and fly underneath you with my supportive word hands.
Supportive word hands.
So we still have some time, but I would like to ask you a few questions.
Of course you would.
I know how much you love that.
Oh, do I?
What do you do with a client who is in that same place where you've got someone who can't find anything positive to anchor onto? That person who maybe just cries endlessly, who can't step into that feeling of finding any good or anything positive. How do you work with them?
Depends on, obviously, the situation. I think it depends on a number of things. One, if someone is in a state of mourning, for example, they've lost someone really close, I wouldn't push someone at that point, because the whole being in that state of mourning, being in a state of having lost someone can really throw someone off, especially somebody who's had faith their whole life, or who's had this real religious or spiritual connection and end up losing someone through an illness or through something like that. It's a very different approach than through someone who's just in a depression and that has had, some challenges that holds them down. So if it's for the latter, if it's for someone that, is just through a depression or having a hard time in life and just trying to get through things, I always bring it back to, if you find, life is so difficult and everything's challenging, it's about refocusing on the little things that are positive or that are going right. And sometimes that's hard when things are very difficult. And it can be something as simple as, having gratitude for the things you do have. Because I think when we shift our perspective to being grateful, it changes the vibration, it changes our frequency, and it also changes our focus, right? If we're shifting our focus to gratitudes, and I usually suggest everyone who's kind of in a bad place to write down 3 different gratitudes every day. And it's something can be as simple as, you're grateful for waking up the next morning, having another day in front of you. I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for my family, for my loved ones. Heck, it can be something I'm grateful for my cup of coffee every morning that's right there when I need it. No matter what it is. But to be in that vibration of appreciation and compassion and gratitude, it really raises our vibrations. And so if we are at a place of gratitude, you can't be in a place of sadness, right? Because both are completely different frequencies. So when people start to retrain their brain to shift their focus to something positive, you end up shifting your frequency and your vibrations. And then that raises, your emotions aren't so heavy, the vibrations aren't so intense. So it makes it much easier to look at things, even if life is difficult, but just to remind yourself that there are still little things to be thankful for. I think that kind of shifts people's perspective when they're really in that point of, feeling like I've given up on God, the universe, spirituality, all of it, because they're unhappy. It really is about reshifting focus. What do you usually do? What do you suggest, Wendy?
I love everything you said right there. You made some really, really good points, and very similar. I go into trying to find things that they're grateful for, things that they're thankful for, um, areas of self-belief, what they're good at, um, what they what skill sets say that they did learn from that job, or that they did do well in that relationship, or how well they loved, or how well they communicated, knowing that those are gifts that they can bring forward into their tomorrows, into their next job, or into their next relationship,
Yeah.
to gather the pieces that are amazing, and to assess sort of, what you've got. So you're driving down the road, your car breaks down, and it's not going to drive any further. You have to take what you need out of that car,
Yeah.
leave the body of the car behind, and carry forward with what you chose to keep from inside the car to switch into your new vehicle. And I think that that's often what life is like when we hit these back steps. Is our car broke down, I need to go inside that car. I need to be realistic about what I'm dealing with, and I need to take what I need out of it and know that I'm upgrading, or I can trust myself to choose well for my next pathway or my next decision. So a lot of what you're saying I resonate with tremendously.
Yeah.
You made a really good point as well, and it triggered my thoughts, that to have a spiritual practice, to start to really bring this stuff into your life, you don't have to relinquish your religious foundations. A lot of
Exactly.
people think when we call ourselves spiritual that we have let go, that every one of us has somehow let go of our spiritual found. Yeah, but we suddenly are anti-religion, and
Devil worship.
exactly. And what I think a lot of people really don't understand about spirituality is that it integrates beautifully and seamlessly along with every single religion. There is no religion that a spiritual life practice can't integrate with greatly. And I think that's another roadblock that people run into when they're developing their spiritual self, is that they feel that they have to be in conflict with their previous religious beliefs often, or that suddenly they're very confused of what have I been thinking all this time, or what have I been taught all this time, and can really almost get frozen in a state of, do I have to let all that go to move forward? And I think it's an important place to stop and assess. But in my opinion, from whatever religious foundation you stem from, there is so much beautiful spiritual stuff to learn from that. The original intentions of the religion, the love base, the love core, outreach aspects, the belief processes, traditions as well. There's so much attached to every religion that no matter what it is, it wouldn't matter to me what religion it is. You can bring it right along into your spiritual journey and not feel that you can't hold something in both hands. You have limitless hands in spirituality, because all is possible. You can hold as much as you want from your past. You don't have to suddenly turn your back on everything you've learned up until now.
And it's also, the reverse, whereas you don't have to be religious to be spiritual. So if you don't have a religion that you follow, or if you don't have a belief system that you follow, but have a belief in a higher power, or have a belief in God and that there's something more, you don't have to have religion to be connected to the higher power. And that's where sometimes people confuse religion with spirituality. It's not the same thing. Religion is a practice that you follow, whereas spirituality is very individual. It's your own experience with spirit.
And Sheila wrote in the chat room, without spirituality, there really is no religion. And I agree. I think spirituality is sort of the larger umbrella that all religions sit underneath. I think that we all are naturally spiritual beings. We are these light bodies, these illuminated light beings inside of our bodies, and we can carry that again into every religion. And I agree completely with that statement, Sheila. I'm so grateful. I wanted to give a shout out to the chat room. Thank our amazing friends in there, because some of our shows are we're here, we're talking to each other, we're talking out to the world, but there's something so freaking great about checking that chat room and from our friends there, and the questions and the statements posed are always so wonderful. And I want to say how grateful we are. And we've been doing this a long time, Jules. We've come past our 2-year mark. 2 years doing this together.
Time
And
flies. 2 years on this station already. Woo!
years on this station, yes. And we're lucky. I want to also say you can find me at Love Dragons, LUVDRAGONS.ca. I'll type it in the chat room. And Jules, do you have anything spectacular going on?
Nothing spectacular, but I got some exciting things. So myself, you can find me at ohmreadings.ca. That's ohmreadings.ca. So September is my special month, back to school, back to work, and all that fun stuff. So I have a 45-minute relationship special going on for $75 and a $20 off a usual 1-hour session. So I would be more than happy to accommodate anyone with either.
I love that, Miss Jules. And you do gift certificates as well, correct?
I do gift certificates, and with the holidays and Christmas coming up, it's actually one of those things that both Wendy and I do. We have gift certificates for our services, whether it be readings or workshops or coaching, all of the above. Correct? So,
coming up after us is Mary Zadakoff's Wake Up to Your Nightlife. She is incredible. We love her program. We love the Thursday night lineup. We call it Triple Crown Thursdays. And thanks to Kim Dodds, who comes up after Mary. She coined it. Mary sends pictures out of 3 little crowns in her gardens with different views. We as a group on Thursday nights are so lucky to be working all together. The 3 different programs are amazing. Beacon of Light Radio has been so good to us. We're thankful for Charity, Jennifer, Susan. We love you guys so incredibly much. And are beyond honored for 2 years running and continuing forging into the next. I don't think we've had any setbacks, It's been all forward with Beacon of Light for us.
Yes, and we love it. And a huge shout out and a thank you to Charity, our producer. She is amazing, as well as Susan and Jennifer, who are awesome as well, part of the team. Thank you, ladies, for making the experience here an amazing one as usual. Until then, everyone else, we are back next week, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. And we don't have a topic just yet, do we?
No, but I'm open to anything.
Yeah, so actually, why don't we do that? Let's ask for suggestions in the chat room tonight. If anyone wants any kind of subjects that you'd be interested in hearing us chat about or discuss, please throw it in the chat room tonight.
Put it in there. Tell us what you want to hear. Jules and I are looking for a topic to gnaw on.
Yeah, no way. All right, good night, everyone.